Now, on to San Francisco, where Walter Mondale and Geraldine Ferraro arrived today for what would be the greatest honor their party could bestow, the presidential and vice presidential nominations.
For those stories, Stan Turner joins us live in San Francisco via our exclusive satellite news gathering van, News Star 5. Stan.
Good afternoon, Cindy and Dennis. Unlike your weather, it's beautiful here. A lovely sea breeze has been blowing in through the Golden Gate here all day and now into the afternoon, so we couldn't complain at all about the weather. We are standing here high on what they call Telegraph Hill. The Coit Tower Monument, which we'll probably show you later in the week, is right here. But best of all, really, is the commanding, awesome view you get here of San Francisco Bay. Immediately behind me here, that rock back there is known as the Rock. That's Alcatraz, the notorious former federal prison. And as we speak, and if the Democrats happen to be on schedule, they are now convening officially their 1984 National Convention at the Moscone Center. That's about 3 miles directly behind us. You're looking north, it would be south from here. And of course, the Minnesota delegation is a part of that. I saw a few stragglers from our delegation, not yet there, but they're on their way. All 86 state delegates and 29 alternates held their first caucus this morning. Credentials were handed out, and the group was addressed by State DFL Chair Mary Monahan. But noticeably absent from this first caucus meeting was Governor Rudy Perpich. He is the head of the state delegation. Eyewitness News has learned that last night Perpich quit his post as delegation chair. He would not say why. He also told our Lindsey Strand he will decide by Friday if he will run for a second term as governor. And he's also considering running for president of the National Governors Association.
That I would be seeking re-election, and this is why I'll have to make a decision this week.
And what's your thought at this point, Governor? Isn't it a clear-cut answer? The state's on a good track. Why not run a second term, no doubt?
Well, if I decide to go for the, chair of the National Governors Association to seek that, then obviously I will be a candidate.
Well, the delegation today, it was not all work and no play. The delegation took a boat ride this morning out here on San Francisco Bay. And, of course, they're now, as we said, assembled on the convention floor over at Moscone Center. And tonight at 6 o'clock, we will be switching live to Moscone, where our government specialist, Lindsey Strand, will have a full report for us on the latest doings and sayings of the Minnesota delegation. Well, it's not only national politics right here being played out in San Francisco. This morning, Minnesota's 8th District Congressman James Oberstar joined Governor Perpich to officially endorse Joan Groh's campaign for the United States Senate. Oberstar was Groh's closest challenger in the DFL endorsement fight. Oberstar told a news conference that the DFL must be united in order to defeat Rudy Boschwitz come November.
I believe the most important thing that we can do is to have a united Democratic Farmer Labor Party to steer this state of Minnesota with its significant leadership role cast in that position by the impending nomination of the Mondale-Ferraro ticket.
As you probably know, Oberstar is now actively seeking re-election to his 8th District congressional seat in the U.S. House. Walter Mondale and Geraldine Ferraro, who hope to be nominated come Thursday for vice president and president respectively, arrived today at San Francisco International Airport. They were joining the Democratic Convention festivities. They wasted little time getting involved. They attended a Democratic Party fundraiser for women candidates, including Joan Groh. The Mondale campaign is headquartered at the Meridian Hotel. That's just a short distance from the convention hall, and we might say within view of the huge protest area outside the convention center. And oh yes, Gary Hart and Jesse Jackson, well, they say they are still very much in this race for the Democratic presidential nomination. In fact, Hart campaign officials said today that Hart would choose Jerry Ferraro for vice president if he pulled a major upset and wrestled the Democratic presidential nomination away from Mondale. And a significant number of delegates are beginning to wear Hart-Ferraro buttons and are concluding that the best way to get a woman in the White House is on a Hart-Ferraro ticket. And for his part, Jesse Jackson told 200 of his delegates he plans to charge ahead with his fight for the minority platform plans already rejected by the Mondale-controlled Platform Committee. I'm sure we'll hear more about these developments in the hours and days to come. Well, we can tell you that San Francisco is truly an amazing place for this kind of thing. Its people, its political climate, and its general atmosphere really make for an interesting mix. And no matter what you think of the Democrats or whatever you think of this city, we can tell you that the two are coexisting very nicely. They seem to have come to an accommodation and so far are getting along very nicely, thank you. We're going to explore that connection today now in today's Focus Report. Here that is.
San Francisco, the city by the bay. Its very name conjures a different image to just about everyone who has ever visited or read about it. Its tourist attractions are well known: Fisherman's Wharf, the Golden Gate Bridge, and the famed cable cars just brought back after a $60 million renovation project. It's a financial center, too. Worldwide corporations in the commerce and banking fields headquarter their operations here. It also boasts a melting pot, or, as some San Franciscans call it, a mosaic of ethnic communities. The Chinese, Vietnamese, Mexicans, and Filipinos, just a few of the large ethnic populations blending in. We must also mention the gay community and its impact here. An estimated 15% of the city population is gay, and it has one of the highest percentages of registered voters and voter turnout in the city.
San Francisco does know how to host, how to entertain, and how to party. Just 4 years ago, tourism alone pumped an estimated $3.3 billion into this local economy, and is probably a major reason why the Democrats awarded their 1984 convention to this city.
The convention has been more than a year in the making, and this city stands ready to host the crush of 30,000 people in town for this 4-day event. The city has put on its best face for the delegates and for the members of the local, national, and international media here to watch. The financial impact on San Francisco will be phenomenal. Estimates running anywhere from $35 to $50 million, with some estimates as high as $65 million. Andy Balin works with the San Francisco Host Committee, an organization set up specifically to work with the Democratic Party to make sure this convention and the city coexist for a harmonious gathering. Balin says no matter what you think of San Francisco, the city is uniquely qualified to represent a diverse cross-section of the political spectrum.
I think we can offer a tolerance. I think we can offer an understanding that not everybody has the same direction and need, but pretty much people have a spirit, people have a pride, and they want to see a united party here. And I think whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, I think that people will be pleased overall that we have done a good job and that we will put on a great convention and everyone will enjoy it.
The focus of the entire week will be within the confines of this building, the Moscone Center. Workmen, technicians, and convention planners have been here for more than a month constructing a convention setting in the center's underground exhibit hall. The central podium looms large across the hall to overlook the nearly 4,000 delegates who will take up space on the floor. A sophisticated computer tally system has also been installed, this to speed up the delegate count process on nomination night on Wednesday. Moscone Center is not the most ideal physical setting for a convention, but Terry Michael of the Democratic National Committee says San Francisco was chosen for several other reasons besides its convention hall.
There are a lot of positive messages from this city. We're in the West. We haven't held a convention in the West since 1960 when we nominated John F. Kennedy. We did pretty well that year. This city has a tremendous number of women in leadership positions. That's a real good message for the Democratic Party this year.
The news media operation at this convention can only be described as awesome. 2,200 organizations bringing in some 14,000 people, from the smallest weekly newspaper to the major network operations. They are all here.
It is a logistical problem finding workspace for the people who need workspace, giving enough credentials, having enough credentials. Some people we just had to turn down because we reached a saturation point, and perhaps we've reached it this year.
And San Francisco being San Francisco and Democrats being Democrats, there will be lots to do outside of politics. City organizers have scheduled huge parties to keep the delegates and the VIPs entertained. On Saturday night, this giant outdoor party at the city's trendy Embarcadero Center was held for the media. You can believe that once the lights go out in the Moscone Center each night, the city will light up for one big party.
Well, that's it now from San Francisco, at least for this time period. We want to tell you that former President Jimmy Carter will be addressing the convention tonight, as well as we'll be getting the keynote address from New York Governor Mario Cuomo. So we'll have those reports for you as part of the Eyewitness News Update tonight at 10. As for right now, Cindy and Dennis, so long from San Francisco.
Mention, Sam, we really enjoyed your tour of San Francisco. Those of us who cannot be out there among the craziness can just enjoy the nice part. So.
You envy us, don't you?
No, we don't, Stan.
I do.
But have a good time.
Okay, thank you.
We'll see you at 6. But still to come in this half hour of news at 5. Neil Murray will...
This is Stan Turner reporting live from windy San Francisco. And as part of Eyewitness News at 6 tonight, we'll have these local stories for you coming from the Democratic National Convention. Governor Rudy Perpich quits as head of the Minnesota delegation here in San Francisco. Joan Grow receives the endorsement of James Oberstar, her closest challenger in the U.S. Senate endorsement race. And the Minnesota delegation takes a relaxing boat ride out in San Francisco Bay. We'll have these stories live for you coming from here, San Francisco.
And Stan, here in the Twin Cities, some heavy weather brought trees down and damaged houses in the western suburbs. Now, a lot of Minnesota news being made across the coast. In San Francisco this Monday, the names of Joan Grow, Jim Oberstar, Rudy Perpich, Bob Matson all came up in the city by the bay today. And that is where Stan Turner is waiting to give us the details. Good evening once again, Stan.
Good evening, Cindy, and hello, everyone, and welcome from San Francisco. The weather out here, I can tell you, is beautiful. It's tranquil, both the weather and the politics so far. The 1984 Democratic National Convention is officially underway. They called it to order a couple of hours ago down the road here, about 2 miles at the Moscone Center, that underground palace. Some 5,000 delegates and alternates gathered in this underground convention center for the convention opening from Democratic Party Chairman Charles Manette. He's been in the news a lot lately. Tonight's schedule includes remarks from Convention Chair, Kentucky Governor Martha Lane Collins, San Francisco Mayor Dianne Feinstein, and former President Jimmy Carter. New York Governor Mario Cuomo will deliver the keynote address. Well, Governor Perpich has made for himself something of a reputation as a non-traditional politician, and he certainly has lived up to that reputation here in San Francisco. Perpich is not a delegate to this convention, but he did plan to head up the Minnesota contingent here. That is, until he arrived here today. A surprise. It happened this morning. The governor was noticeably absent when the delegates held their first meeting at the Holiday Inn. Perpich was having breakfast with some other governors, and later he told Eyewitness News he has quit his post as chair, but would not explain why. He said he wanted to inform party officials first. This afternoon, Perpich invited the Democratic governors out on a boat. He is flirting with running for chairmanship of the National Governors Association, which would also mean he intends to run for re-election as governor. He told Lindsey Strand he'll decide by the end of the week if he'll go for a second term.
I really haven't, until I kind of get a feel of what's going on, and I'll be in a much better position by Thursday, and I will let you know Thursday.
Well, the Minnesota delegation is all on the convention floor right now for this first day of official proceedings at Moscone Center, and that is precisely where our government specialist Lindsey Strand is situated right now. Lindsey, what's happening there?
Now we have to go back to the man with the beautiful view, Stan Turner. Stan?
I've got the best view in town, Lindsey, no doubt about it. Thank you very much. The delegates have come to San Francisco, obviously, to do their official business. That is, officially nominate a presidential, vice presidential ticket. That only began today, that process, which means they've had a lot of time for parties over this past weekend, and they've been doing just that. We can tell you that the Minnesota delegation was treated to a tour of San Francisco via pleasure boat through San Francisco Bay this morning. For some of the delegates and Mondale volunteer staff, the boat ride was the latest in a long string of parties.
It's not easy, really. I haven't worked this hard since the 4th of July.
That long?
That's right.
How many parties have you been to? Can you even count the number?
Oh, no, I just arrived last night, so...
Well, we've been counting. We can tell you that on Sunday, yesterday alone, there were 57 parties that we know about, and a local caterer says by the time this convention is over and done with and is nominated as presidential candidate, there will have been nearly 100 official, formal parties and celebrations. This is a party town as well as a convention town. Well, that is the latest, Cindy, from San Francisco right now. Lindsey and I will be back to join you on the Eyewitness News Update tonight at 10 o'clock to bring you the very latest on both the politics and the non-politics here from beautiful and windy San Francisco.
I think the wind you can probably put up with. The view is spectacular. Quickly, Stan, what are the highlights? What are we going to talk about this evening at the convention?
Well, this evening, Cindy, former President Jimmy Carter will be addressing the delegates. We'll have the keynote address. It's expected to be a call for unity from New York Governor Mario Cuomo. So it'll be interesting to see what those two have to say.
All right. All right. We will see you at 10. Thanks,
Right
Stan. Still ahead, some non... But we're going to go now to our second big story of the day. The Democrats' National Convention opened in San Francisco, and we have Stan Turner live via News Star 5 for the full story. Stan?
All right, Cindy, thank you. Good evening, everyone. What do you think of the view? That is Nob Hill, downtown San Francisco, just to set the stage for you. So I'll tell you that there's very little suspense, actually, in this convention town tonight. Just isn't much of a mystery at all right now. Barring a major political earthquake, the delegates here will nominate Minnesotan Walter Mondale as president and Geraldine Ferraro as his vice presidential running mate come Thursday night. As for right now, unity, that's the big word that's floating about San Francisco right now as this convention settles in, and speakers tonight were echoing that theme. National Chairman Charles Manette opened the convention today, praising the selection of Ferraro, calling for a unified effort against President Reagan, and warning that Reagan's re-election could mean a greater risk of nuclear war. Later, former President Carter took the podium, chastising Reagan for what he called unwarranted belligerence to foreign nations and the most appalling budget deficits in history here at home. And delivering the party's keynote address tonight, New York Governor Mario Cuomo echoed Carter's themes, and he charged that the president is leading the nation toward bankruptcy or war. Now, tonight, the candidate himself made a move toward unity. Mondale was scheduled to meet with both the Reverend Jesse Jackson and Gary Hart to try to put together a unified front as the party now, after this convention, marches on to try and take the White House away from Ronald Reagan. Well, on less cosmic matters, is he or isn't he? That's a big question insofar as the Minnesota delegation is concerned. That is the question delegates are asking tonight about Governor Perpich's role as delegation chair. Earlier today, he told Lindsey Strand he no longer wanted the job he'd been elected to serve in.
Chairman of the delegation any longer.
Well, long story. I am busy on many other, events, and there's other reasons, and I'll discuss that with you later if you want.
Well, we can tell you the governor has not been around since that time, at least at that point. Delegates said they hadn't seen him on the floor today. An aide to the governor now says Perpich has not resigned. All this is leaving the delegates wondering.
Haven't seen him since last night, and to my knowledge, he was elected chairman of our delegation, and he's still chair.
Just a bit ago, our Pat Myland caught up with Governor Perpich down at the Delegates Hotel. Perpich appeared to be miffed about all this. Apparently, feminists in the Minnesota delegation pressured Mr. Perpich to basically step aside and defer to a woman, namely Mary Monahan, the state DFL chair, to do the actual announcing of the delegate tallies on national television as the votes from the Minnesota delegation come up. Perpich said he's going to function, therefore, as something of an honorary chairman and let Monahan do the deed. As I say, he appears to be miffed about that, claiming that he has a long and good record fighting for women's rights. Now, as to the question earlier raised as to whether Perpich would want to run for chairmanship of the National Governors Association, he said after a long walk and a long talk with his wife today, he has decided against that post, which raises the further question as to whether Perpich will indeed seek a second term for governor. He is hedging on that issue right now. He says he simply doesn't want to talk about it. We don't know when he will. Well, there's another question floating around this town tonight. Who will the 17 pro-life delegates in the Minnesota delegation vote for when it comes time to pick that presidential nominee officially Thursday night? They are considering 5 people to vote for as a protest vote, and one of them, none other than Minnesota State Treasurer Bob Mattson. And that's got one party person leaders hope won't be chosen.
We certainly would prefer that that wouldn't happen, and we've suggested to the pro-life delegates that they might want to, simply abstain.
Well, Cindy, that is it right here from Telegraph Hill, the Coit Tower at this instant. We, of course, be back a bit later in the newscast. We'll be switching live down to Lindsey Strand for the latest information as to what's going on with the Minnesota delegation on the convention floor at Moscone Center down the street here. Back to you.
We will be checking with you then. Thanks, Stan.
Right.
In other local news tonight, St. Paul. The Democratic National Convention. So let's go back to Stan. Live via News Star 5, overlooking beautiful Nob Hill in San Francisco. Stan.
That's right, Cindy. That is Fisherman's Wharf you see right now. And with this first day of the convention business over, one of the biggest parties of the convention is underway not far away from us. We're looking down on it, Fisherman's Wharf right now. This party is called Oh, What a Night. It's being hosted by California Assembly Speaker Willie Brown, and tickets to this gala event, we understand, are about as rare as a quiet Democratic National Convention. Okay, our government specialist Lindsey Strand is standing by now at Moscone Center, that underground fortress just down the street here, to tell us about one of Minnesota's 86 delegates. Lindsey?
Well, Stan, there's all kinds of things that the delegates can be doing here, but surprisingly, so far, there does not seem to be special attention that's being paid to the Minnesota delegation because of Mondale. But most of the Minnesota delegates, the majority...
All right, thank you, Lindsey, and that'll do it. That's our story from San Francisco on this first night of the Democratic National Convention. And Cindy will be back with more for you tomorrow night at 5, 6, and 10 via this beautiful device known as News Star 5. Back to you.
Hope your beautiful weather holds out too, Stan.
I do,
We'll
too.
see you tomorrow.
Righto.
In sports tonight, the torch.
In San Francisco, day 2 of the Democratic National Convention is underway, and the forces for all 3 of the contenders for the nomination are debating the philosophical blueprint for the '84 campaign, the platform. Now with the latest from San Francisco, Stan Turner joins us live via our exclusive satellite news gathering van, News Star 5. Stan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dennis. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Just to set the stage here, it's a beautiful day. You probably can tell that. And the bridge behind me here, that is not the Golden Gate. That's the Oakland Bay Bridge. That's the only bridge we can really see clearly from here. The Golden Gate behind us here is fogged in once again. Well, so much for the sightseeing tour. The convention floor, if it's not throbbing right now, is certainly alive with the sights and the sounds of some 5,000 regular delegates and alternates as they get down to the serious business of putting together a party platform. The platform being considered was drafted for Walter Mondale's candidacy, but Jesse Jackson has four planks that he wants to see added, and Gary Hart has one of his own. Last night, the three candidates got together in an effort to strike a note of unity. Mondale, Jackson, and Hart all say they'd like to avert the kind of platform fight that marred the 1980 convention. Indeed, there are indications that the Mondale camp will accept Hart's call for restrictions on the use of U.S. military forces overseas, but two of Jackson's planks are likely to be items of floor debate. One calls for cuts in defense spending, and the other proposes an end to runoff primaries in the South. Now, this Minnesota delegation, all 86 regulars, has been firmly behind the move to toughen up the measure on arms control. This morning, the Mondale camp brought in Ohio Senator Howard Metzenbaum to try and change the delegates' minds. He said a vote for the no first strike plan could be devastating to the Mondale ticket.
Those of us who are so concerned about world peace and about a nuclear holocaust have an obligation to do that which we can to assure the fact that the one man in this nation who I believe is the most dangerous with respect to causing a nuclear holocaust be defeated at the next election.
But Minnesota Freeze activist Melinda McLaughlin urged the delegates not to fall prey to the disunity argument, and she pointed out the delegates voted at the state convention in Minnesota for a policy to ensure that the United States would never use a nuclear weapon first.
As peace delegates, to continue pushing to make it the strongest possible peace platform that we can make it. We don't want to be inconsistent in our no first use platform.
We will have more on this developing story for you tonight on the 6 o'clock edition of Eyewitness News. Well, as we first told you here yesterday, Governor Perpich has stepped aside as chairman of the Minnesota delegation. Perpich made the move after taking offense to the feminists' push in the delegation to replace him to announce one of the votes this coming Thursday night. The feminists wanted a woman from Minnesota to announce the Minnesota vote tally when it came time to vote for our vice presidential candidate, Geraldine Ferraro. Today, Sue Rockney, the woman who asked Perpich to step aside for the one vote, says he overreacted by walking away from the chairman's duties.
And I guess all I would say is he's totally overreacted. Perhaps he should have thought of this himself. It's such a reasonable kind of thing. It's such a typical Minnesota kind of thing that I'm really very surprised by his very negative reaction and now his decision that he isn't going to do anything if he can't do it all. And we just normally don't behave that way.
Well, Governor Perpich's chairman's duties have been assumed now by DFL State Party Chair Mary Monahan. The governor today said again that he will not even be on the floor to announce Minnesota's vote when Walter Mondale's nomination is put up to the vote. Well, let's shift gears here if we could for just a minute. The all work and no play would make the Democrats something of a dull party, but Democrats are rarely dull. Anybody is rarely dull here in San Francisco. Pat Milan reports with tongue firmly planted in cheek that some of the most important business every day is accomplished at those very important San Francisco parties.
It's serious business, this business of nominating a Democratic presidential candidate. Why a poor delegate must spend hours every day just mulling over which party to attend and which one to miss. At night, it might be a visit to the Moscone Art Gallery, but don't dare stay too late because there's plenty to do in the morning. If you think these Minnesota delegates are heading into a stuffy convention center for several long, sweaty hours of political debate, think again. These delegates are off to do what most delegates do at a major political convention: party. If it's Monday, this must be a tour of San Francisco from the Bay. Once herded on board the boat, the Minnesotans must survive the next 90 minutes on lox and bagels, strawberries, Danish, and oh my gosh, if it's 10 a.m. in San Francisco, that means it's noon back home in Minneapolis, so it's okay for a drink. On the house, of course. Can you think of the number of parties you've been invited to since you got here?
Oh, boy. About every half an hour there's one, so probably about 10 or 20 in the last 2 days.
Diane proudly told us that she's made it to every one of those 10 or 20 parties. But John Madden was nearby to remind everyone that all of this is important stuff.
Well, this is serious business, however, and we intend to treat it that way, and we have a platform to adopt, we have party officers to elect, and a presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate, and we take that seriously.
Now, that's a lot to accomplish, especially on board a boat. Pat Milan, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, working feverishly in San Francisco Harbor.
Thank you very much, Pat. Well, you can bet that the partying will shift into high gear here once again tonight after the final gavel falls on tonight's session of the convention goings-on down at Moscone Center. Also on tap this evening during that session, the Reverend Jesse Jackson will address the delegates. Today, he asked black delegates to vote for him on the first ballot as a matter of what he called conviction and conscience. And we'll have Jackson's speech and more tonight at 10, and I will be back here, of course, at 6 o'clock with more from this Democratic National Convention as we key on the Minnesotans out here for Convention 84. Back to you, Dennis.
Stan, I have one question regarding the flap over the governor and his not reading some of the numbers of the Minnesota delegation. Is this the usual note of discord that makes DFLers famous, or is this a real problem for our delegation?
Well, it's hard to characterize. It is typical of the Democratic Party. They do have their, their intra-family quarrels from time to time. This time around, the governor is more miffed, I think, than anything. He felt that he has a long and distinguished record on the matter of women's rights dating back 20-some years when he was on the Ely, Minnesota School Board. Says he's been fighting for that cause before some women ever heard about it. So the symbolism of it hurts him, but I think it's the kind of thing that makes for a lot of news and a lot of hard feelings for a bit. But I think that'll probably blow over here shortly.
Okay.
The delegation, judging from past years, seems pretty much together.
Okay, thank you. Stan Turner reporting from San Francisco. We will see you at 6 o'clock. Still coming up on Eyewitness News at 5.
This is Stan Turner live in San Francisco from the Democratic National Convention. And tonight on Eyewitness News at 6, we have the following stories for you from here. Governor Perpich finally appears before the Minnesota delegation and tells delegates he will play a nearly invisible role on the convention floor. Ohio Senator Howard Metzenbaum was recruited by Walter Mondale to slow down Minnesota's strong nuclear-free sentiments, and delegates from Minnesota are coached on how to look more colorful on the floor. These stories coming live to you from San Francisco next.
In news a bit closer to home, Eyewitness News has learned that 2 of the 3 Burlington Northern train crew. Some fun and, of course, some fussing and feuding among Minnesota delegates to the Democratic National Convention in San Francisco. That is where Stan Turner is standing by live via News Star 5. Stan.
Righto, Dennis, thank you, and good evening, everyone. Live from San Francisco here. Well, the second day session of this Democratic National Convention is well underway. The Platform Committee report is now being presented over at Moscone Center. The Minnesota delegation today, we can tell you, was busy on several fronts, and we began first with that flap we told you about, the one involving Governor Rudy Perpich. The governor did show up at this morning's meeting, the daily meeting of the Minnesota delegation at the hotel, but Perpich, who's offended by remarks from National Committee woman and feminist Sue Rockney, is sticking to his decision to step aside as delegation chairman, and it was evident in his 18-second comments to the delegates.
Mary told me that I could just sit here very silently, enjoy the proceedings, and then she calls on me. We've had, yesterday I spent most of my day with the National Governors Association, and I look forward to the proceedings for the next 3 days, and a big celebration tomorrow night here at the hotel. Thank you very much.
In an interview with Eyewitness News, in the interview this morning with Eyewitness News, Sue Rockney called the governor's decision to step aside as really overreacting. Rockney told us that it was a reasonable request to make of the governor to step aside on just one vote so a Minnesota woman could announce the state delegation's support for Geraldine Ferraro. Well, the delegation was also voicing its opinion today over that hot potato item here, that is over the nuclear freeze item. We go live now to the Moscone Center, the convention hall, to our government specialist, Lindsay Strand. Lindsay?
Stan, this is one of the few items that really is breaking this convention apart that is controversial. It is the question of nuclear freeze and the so-called no first strike plank. Now, what we...
There would be no first use. We'll be watching it for you on the floor. Stan?
All right, thank you very much, Pat and Lindsay, reporting live from Moscone Center, the convention hall. Finally, from San Francisco today, we can tell you something odd here, kind of. The Minnesota delegation was given a lesson in cheerleading this morning. That's right. At this morning's caucus, Peggy Spector of Golden Valley told fellow delegates they looked too dull on the floor last night, that they need to put more pizzazz in their applauding and cheering. So Peggy put the delegates through a bit of cheerleading practice, pretending that Dan Bai, the infant son of one alternate delegate, was the presidential nominee.
This is it. We are going to nominate Dan Bai
On that laughable note, we wrap things up for this time from San Francisco. We'll have a report, of course, in the update tonight, especially on the Jesse Jackson address to the convention. By the way, you are looking east right now out here at San Francisco Bay. That is Treasure Island behind me. It's a man-made island and site of the World's Fair in the late 1930s. So much for the history lesson, Dennis. We'll have more current events for you coming up tonight on Eyewitness News, the update at 10 o'clock. Back to you.
We'll look for you then. Thank you, Stan.
Righto.
In other news, an explosive hearing today.
Getting sex abuse charges at Children's Theater. We're going to go underwater tonight for the next segment of Thrill Seekers.
And here in San Francisco, we'll have a report on the Democrats' platform debate and other developments here at day 2 of their national convention, live via News Star 5, coming up next on the Eyewitness News Update.
We turn our attention now to national politics and the Democratic Convention in San Francisco. That's where Stan Turner is standing by live via News Star 5 with tonight's story. Stan?
Good evening, Cindy. Hello, everyone. I'm standing on one of San Francisco's truly beautiful hills. This is Telegraph Hill. Speaking of hills, that's Nob Hill disappearing in the fog behind me here. Below us at the Moscone Convention Center today, the Democrats handed Walter Mondale just what he ordered. The platform is the set of ideas, goals, and purposes that Mondale will run on this fall. And tonight, the delegates voted down efforts to include 3 measures backed by Jesse Jackson. Jackson did win, though, on a 4th plank. All this seems to indicate that Mondale and his forces are in firm control here at this convention. Now, liberal Minnesota delegates were not trying to embarrass Walter Mondale here tonight, but they did attempt to challenge the very party platform that he supports, the one that his people put together. Pat Milan reports that outside of a resolution on affirmative action, the minority resolution to change the Democratic platform did not fare very well at all.
When Mary Monahan tells the world just who Minnesota Democrats want for president, as many as 17 of the votes will be for someone other than Mondale, or Hart, or Jackson.
Despite now, obviously we didn't get the right report up there. We'll work to get that up for you in just a moment. We can tell you, though, that despite his efforts in the platform debates tonight, the Reverend Jesse Jackson truly had his moment to shine before the delegates in a speech before the convention this evening. You probably saw it here on Channel 5 in a rousing call for Democratic unity against the Reagan bid for re-election. Jackson made a promise to those who have backed his presidential bid, what he calls the Rainbow Coalition. And this is some of what this dynamic speaker had to say tonight.
They are restless and seek relief. They have voted in record numbers. They have invested the faith, hope, and trust that they have in us. The Democratic Party must send them a signal that we care. I pledge my best not to let them down.
Agnes? And Mr. Jackson pledged his support to the party's nominee, expected to be Walter Mondale, of course, this fall. Well, Cindy, that's it from here right now from Telegraph Hill. We have much more for you coming up. We'll be going live to Lindsay Strand at Moscone Center. For now, that's it from San Francisco. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, Stan. Well, while the Democrats meeting in San Francisco, thanks. We're going to have to go back now to Stan Turner in San Francisco for an update on the Democratic National Convention. Stan?
All right, thank you, Cindy. Once again, with events winding down in the Moscone Center right now, the stage is set for tomorrow night's nominating process when Walter Mondale, barring a major surprise, political surprise of the century, is expected to get the Democratic Party nomination. Government specialist Lindsay Strand is waiting now live on the convention floor at Moscone Center with a closer look at Minnesota delegates still uncommitted to a presidential nominee. Lindsay?
Stan, you are right. It is winding down here, but indeed they just finished a very strong show of support for Jesse Jackson. It was really the first time here that we saw a big night, and everything in the Minnesota delegation for tomorrow looks like it's all ready. Back to you, Stan.
All right, thank you very much, Lindsay. Well, we have more convention notes to pass along to you. Mondale's running mate, Geraldine Ferraro, met with Southern Democrats today, and despite her Eastern background and feminist views, she has been invited to help campaign in the more conservative states of Georgia and Alabama. Later, she and Mondale toured what is called a middle school here in San Francisco. She's a former teacher, and her experience showed today as she took over the class for a time. As we told you earlier in the newscast, liberal Minnesota delegates were among those in the delegation today attempting to challenge the very party platform that Walter Mondale wanted passed here and ultimately was. Pat Milan reports that outside of that resolution on affirmative action, the minority resolutions to change the Democratic platform didn't have very smooth sailing at all.
The liberals among the Minnesota delegation who support Walter Mondale nonetheless wanted to challenge him tonight, and they made an effort to... Their conscience because they did not want to embarrass their candidate. Pat Mylan, Channel 5 Eyewitness News on the convention floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Pat. That'll do it for day 2, our coverage of this Democratic National Convention here in San Francisco. So, Cindy, with that, we will bid you farewell as those of us here up on Telegraph Hill and San Francisco itself back here sing slowly, slowly into the San Francisco Bay fog. Back to you.
Thanks again, Stan. There is much more coming tonight, though, so please stay tuned. The Twins. But first, the Democratic fight to win 4 years in the White House is taking form in San Francisco. Joining us live now with the latest on the Democratic National Convention is our own Stan Turner. Stan again.
Good evening, Cindy. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I actually do brush my hair before airtime, but it's so windy up here, but it's beautiful. Well, the excitement is beginning to build as the clock ticks down to the first ballot nomination that Walter Mondale hopes has his name on it. So without further ado, let us switch live now to the convention floor at Moscone Center, and our government specialist, Lindsay Strand, reporting here on the Mondale Momentum.
Well, Stan, of course, this is the big night for the Minnesota delegation, and as you can see behind me, people are starting to practice here. They are ready. They want to make sure that when the spotlight is on Minnesota tonight, there is evidence that it is for Walter Mondale, at least in large part. In fact, the Mondale campaign has...
Pat Mylan, Channel 5 Eyewitness News at Moscone Center.
Well, Mondale today left really nothing to chance. He met separately with black and Hispanic delegates, those who might defect away from him on the first ballot. But we understand that in fact, we talked with 2 Hispanic members of Minnesota's delegation. They say they will stick with Walter Mondale on the first ballot tonight. Well, this morning, Mondale staffers from Minnesota were working on the finishing touches, like the homemade signs. Delegates themselves say they will be working on their own versions later this evening. They got a visit this morning from Ted Mondale, who said his dad is confident.
We're finally going to get what our state has been striving for since, what, the late 50s. And I think we've had a Minnesotan on the ticket every time since then, and that is we're going to have a Minnesotan president.
Well, Minnesotans are hoping to see Ted's dad, Walter Mondale, at the Minnesota delegates' party tonight following the nomination. That would be at the Holiday Inn Financial District Hotel. But Mondale and his people are making no promises that Mondale will, in fact, show up. In fact, they are scrambling to plan a party of their own, the Minnesota delegates are. And in fact, they were hoping to be invited to a Mondale party across town. They were not. At least they haven't been so far. However, no one is saying that he or she is feeling left out at this point. Right now, pride is pretty much the way everybody in that delegation is feeling. Secretary of State Joan Grow, of course, the endorsed DFL U.S. candidate, Senate candidate, out to unseat Republican Rudy Boschwitz, addressed the convention this afternoon. The subject of her speech, what she calls American agriculture in trouble. Grow has been here in San Francisco, attending many of the Minnesota delegate events and partaking in other activities connected with this Democratic convention. So, the stage is set for tonight's big nomination process. Senator Gary Hart will deliver his speech to the convention. If things are on schedule, Hart's speech should happen about 7:30 Twin Cities time. Then the nominating speeches begin, and the first ballot count should start sometime around, if not shortly after, 10 o'clock your time, Twin Cities time. By the way, when it's finally over, the Minnesota delegation, as we said, is planning a big party back at the delegation hotel. Will Walter Mondale show up? Nobody knows. Cindy, back to you.
You know, on the subject of the Grow speech once again, Stan, that was her big shot at national glory today. How is she being received there? Is she getting a fair amount of national press? I understand that she and her entourage were very eager to get that kind of attention.
She has been getting a fair amount of attention. In fact, one of the morning network programs were going to fly her out and put her on the air this week. It hasn't happened so far, but they have her on standby. So she has been receiving some attention, yes.
Okay, we will see you at 10 o'clock then.
Right.
Thanks, Stan. Back to our local news. Further details tonight.
Counter-argument, which I believe to be far more valid, and I've been following television in the courtroom since the early 50s in Colorado, which I believe was the first experiment. The counter-argument is that quite to the opposite, judges, lawyers, almost everyone involved tend to be more careful if they think the camera is there. And I'd be interested if Judge Young found that his experience in the case, the Big Dan's case.
I'd say only that, and so long as the camera is unobtrusive, it tends not to make a difference. A trial is an extraordinarily intense experience for the lawyers. And I compare the recent case with a very similar case a year and a half ago with equally qualified counsel was tried in exactly the same manner, with as much vigor, as much aggressiveness.
I can't do that. No, that there's a new radio. Sheriff would kill me if I did that.
Well, supposedly about small-town injustice, Tank does justice to nothing. It may jerk now and again into activity, mostly brutal, hardly ever very funny, but more often than not, it just lazes along. In fact, I think I dozed through a bit of Tank, and I'm sure I didn't miss a thing. Tanks a lot.
Such a punny newscast. Finally, an event this weekend in the Twin Cities that could be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You can hear the late, great composer George Gershwin perform his famous Rhapsody in Blue. Now, how can you do that, you might ask? By way of music on a piano roll that Gershwin himself recorded 60 years ago. The performance will be duplicated on a specially equipped piano called a duo art reproducing piano. And here is a little sample of what you'll be hearing. That's pretty amazing. That's about all the time we have for now. We're going to let you go to ABC World News tonight. Please join us again at 6. Good afternoon.
March 23rd, 1984.